Я смотрю, как ты живешь, это вызывает мерзость. Я смотрю, как ты висишь, это тоже просто мерзость.
By now I have been freelancing a lot, making games for other people. Never really enjoyed it, but money is money. The feeling of wanting to finally make my own game never really went away. It only saturated more and more inside of me. I wanted to hold it back until I got my life stable enough. Now I've just come back to my hometown after half a year-long trip outside the country. Just rented a flat, didn't have internet for half a month, and one day while showering I decided to say fuck it. I'll die of old age by waiting for my life to get stable enough in this country, and I can't get rich by doing stupid Fiverr gigs. And I'm very bored, so I'ma start cooking today, and I'ma put all the shit that's bothering my mind right now into it. Didn't know how yet, but I was sure I would find a way. Brutal visuals, brutal music, loneliness, guns, blood, gore, monsters and nice fire. I always like the idea of having a brutal shooter game that sometimes switches to deep philosophical shit. Then back to killing people is cool. I quickly settled on the visual theme for it, a 2D side-scrolling shooter with graphics resembling those of old gritty Flash games that used real images or 3D renders as textures. I can give many examples, but stuff like Burnout, Alien Shooter and TDP4 is what I was inspired by. During the next couple of days, I've been doing beginner stuff like character controls and some basic animations, but the first major milestone would be weapon mechanics. It's not too complex, but not too simple either. The weapons need to feel powerful and somewhat deliver on the player's expectations of how a firearm works. To accomplish this, I decided to add bullet penetration as the first complex mechanic to weapons. Compared to Unity's raycast system, the one in Godot is a bit bare bones. For example, I had to make my own penetrating raycast system. You just take the point of the first raycast hit and shoot another raycast in the same direction, ignoring the previous object. Repeat that how many times you want, and there you have a penetrating raycast system. I plan on adding a lot of guns to the game, so to make this task easier, I need a base system for all of them, where I can tweak a couple of settings to get the result I want, instead of making a new script for every weapon. Now I can change an assault rifle into a shotgun just by tweaking a couple of numbers. Weapons also have a hitbox that doesn't let you shoot if it's inside the wall. The hitbox has an outer and an inner layer. If the inner hitbox also overlaps the wall, even after pushing the weapon back, you cannot fire. This was made so you can't shoot through walls or any other solid objects, as this is not a first-person shooter where all your raycasts are cast straight from your camera. Instead, here the shots are fired directly from the muzzle, thus there is now a reason to use small short weapons in tight spaces. Think of the most basic enemy encounter. One guy stands far away shooting, while the other one charges at you with a melee weapon. The melee system is very simple, nothing like in Dark Souls, with a real hitbox on the weapon model. Here, the hitbox has a big rectangle following your weapon rotation, calling a hit function at an exact frame in the animation. There are also types of melee damage, sharp and blunt. Right now it does nothing, but I plan on implementing stuff like bleeding in the future. And of course, I would want to add explosives to a game like this. And from the get-go, I knew I didn't want them to be as basic as doing a sphere hitbox, making it instead be a bunch of bullets shooting out in all directions, mimicking how shrapnel works in real life. My grenades do have a sphere hitbox, but it is used to move props and ragdolls. Inspiration for this comes from a little underrated game called Cortex Command. Grenades in this game are very devastating, but also a bit random because of the shrapnel system. It might not hit you all the time, but when it does, and especially if it hits you in the head, it's always lethal. Also, I want to spice up the way you throw them by giving more control to the player. You hold the left mouse button to aim and release it to throw. But what is this? It's not exploding. Well, that's because you didn't pull the pin out by pressing right mouse button before throwing it. Doing this allows you to cook a grenade. And you cannot put the pin back, because the grenade spoon also flies away. So either you throw it away, or the grenade explodes in your hands. The way I implemented grenades is once again very modular. The shrapnel explosion itself is a separate scene that just spawns when the grenade's timer runs out. So I can replace it with anything I want. 5 random boxes, for example, or an enemy and 3 pistols, or even more grenades that will duplicate infinitely. And now comes the part where I talk about the stuff that you are supposed to kill with said weapons. The enemy humanoid script is the largest in the game right now, and once again, I made it so I can tweak and shape them into almost any enemy I want to. Their vision is a system that was originally made for the player, but was scrapped due to it being very buggy. How it works is by having an essential field of view of sorts that is a child of the head. When an object enters the FOV, a raycast is shot towards it to check if the target is behind the wall or not. If it is, then the target is not visible. But because the player is not a singular point, but a tall body, I've created a vis point at each segment of the player. The head, the upper torso, and the lower torso. This way it makes more sense than when most of the games just do a raycast to the player's head and that's it. Then there is hearing, which is just a simple radius. When something creates noise that is supposed to be heard by enemies, it performs a check to see if it's inside the hearing range, and if it is, a corresponding event gets called. Up next is aim. It's once again pretty simple. Enemies have an aim point, which is displayed by this little crosshair. They have 3 aiming stages. The first and the default one is rest, when their gun is lowered. The second one is alert. This stage activates when the enemies know of your presence and search for you. After a while, if they don't find you, they go back to the rest stage. And the last one is aim. This one is for when they have a clear line of sight to you. They will aim at your torso if it's visible. If not, they will aim at your head instead. You might also have noticed an interesting variable called headshot preference. It's a percentage that controls how much the enemy will shift their aim to your head if they see both body parts. Now, when they're locked onto you, they are supposed to start shooting. And of course, the shooting types are different. There are 4 shooting types, which are semi-slow, semi-fast, burst slow, and burst fast. And the way they choose which shooting type to use is by distance to the target. These orbits are the distances. And I simply have a parameter for each one of them, where I can select what shooting type they will use at which distance. The shooting itself is kinda funny, because I didn't want to rewrite the entire weapon system again, so what I did is I just gave the enemies the same weapon scenes as the one that the player uses, and just mimicked pressing the buttons, so-called virtual control keys. Also, there is a thing called engagement distance. If the distance to the player is greater than it, the enemy will not attack until they are close enough. This little thing can easily change the enemy's behavior from being a sniper, shooting the player from very far away, to being a CQB fighter. They are still pretty janky and they sometimes do this on slope surfaces, but I have plans on upgrading them, and the stuff that already exists allows me to create enemies that range from slow to react awkward fighters to spin botters. For example, I want to try and revisit the topic of enemies being able to jump and climb ladders. I say revisit because this was the first thing that I tried implementing, which I failed miserably at. But then, after playing Guns, Gore and Cannoli, I noticed that this game does have enemies that can jump across gaps by using 2 fixed points. And I also remember seeing a node called Navigation Link in Godot, so I think it's possible. Besides that, I will make more animations, draw actual sprites for them, give them sounds, and give them the ability to talk with small text that will appear above them. Also Gore. All of this hopefully will make them act more lively. Also, the reason why they are called enemy humanoid is because humanoids are not the only enemy type that will be in the game. There will be cyborgs, robots, bosses and monsters made out of meat that is alive. So don't worry, I still have plenty of ideas on how to make the game interesting and challenging. If you have watched up until this point, this means you are epic. And I would like to know what made you stay. So please tell me about it in the comments. Well, there is a thing that happens to all indie developers after they've coded a bunch of things at the top of their mind. Development hell. It's where games get abandoned because you just don't know what to do. You have all these cool ideas in your head, but you don't know what to make first, then second, and so on. Then you start thinking you have lost motivation and all of that shit. Even if you make progress, it's only a small amount. Sometimes people ask me, how do I not fall into this hole? How do I stay motivated and shit? This almost started happening to me after I finished working on enemies. But because I knew I was not going to back down on making this game, I forged a plan. I knew I needed a goal that consists of other small little goals, which continue getting smaller and smaller like a matryoshka. This goal is the first level of the first chapter, and also this devlog. I decided to work on things that the player will see first, rather than making enemies that will appear only in the later chapters. Around this time, I also made a Trello board for the game. This is what the goals that I talked about look like. And I also had one for the beginning part of the level. This advice can also apply to anything else in life. Having major milestones and breaking them down into smaller and smaller, digestible pieces, and like magic, after completing these little things, by the time you look back on what you have achieved, you will be amazed. In the example of game development though, levels can serve as these goals. Of course, you won't plan out the entire game ahead, and you will most likely return to change something out, but it is still better than to completely be out of focus. This might also help with motivation, since you will be able to see that you have accomplished something, but I don't want to advise on this topic. My motivation is kinda different. I'm a very stubborn motherfucker, especially after this very enlightening half-a-year-long trip that I had. I just started giving less of a fuck what others think about me, and I became more arrogant. I'm a fucking one-way rocket now. I'm flying towards the target with no brakes. Such is the name of the game. MDT, make it or die trying. So, talking about the first level, I started by making a very rough sketch in Photoshop. It is still incomplete, as this is only the starting part that teaches the players the basics. I will make an overview of the level at the end of this video, and also reveal a way to try out MDT for yourself, so stick with me till the end. All levels first start in the grey box stage. It's where you make everything out of depth textures, without any details, to just lay down the fundamental parts of the level, like rooms, doors, puzzles. Sadly, I don't have that much material recorded from the stage, but it was not that interesting anyway. Once I was happy with the layout, I decided to work on lighting. It should be a Black Mesa type facility where everything went to shit all of a sudden. That means some lights are going to be broken, flickering, and also sirens going off. It doesn't really make sense now, because the lights are just coming from nowhere, just a point light in the corner. But I wanted to set the mood for the level from the start, and also see how the shadows would work, like here, where the light gets shredded as it goes through a ventilation cover. I think it's good and important to treat yourself by adding cool looking stuff to the game once in a while. Even if it's not that important right now, the key is to replenish your mental energy, so you will want to work on the level more. And here is where my favorite part so far comes in, texturing. The textures here are a mix of tile sets and big sprites. At first I tried to do everything with tile sets, but I quickly realized that this won't work. I took a quick look at how Brainout was doing it, and made these textures for the third layer of the labs. They are concrete panels reinforced with metal, which you can tell from the grey buttons that stick out. And for the second layer, this is what I've made. This time I didn't use a random concrete texture from the internet. This one was made using a real image I took of a random wall in my town. As you can see, I don't need to travel far to get inspiration and material for post-apocalyptic Soviet designs. I live in this shithole. So, even though this game is not meant to have stuff from games like Stalker, I can't help but project my surroundings into it. I guess it's just an uncontrollable urge in every Slavic person born in places like this. Anyway, you have probably noticed that by themselves, raw textures don't look the same as in the screenshots. Well, that's because they are under layers of other stuff, just like makeup. The first and the most essential layer here is normal mobs. Without them, everything looks flat. For some of them, I had to draw myself, to make the exact representation of the shape I wanted. I mean, rectangular and spherical stuff, but I also used Photoshop's built-in normal map generator. The next layer would be decals, like the dirt that I have. This is pretty much a test texture for now, as I will be adding a lot more details into the rooms in the future. And lastly, the thing that changes the entire perception of depth in the image is ambient occlusion. These simple black gradients are responsible for making rooms feel like actual rooms, with walls, ceilings and doorways. A better way to demonstrate this is in 3D. You can see that every corner is supposed to be darkened, and I wasn't even aware that what I was doing was ambient occlusion until later on. I just kinda knew that for my rooms to look right, they needed to be darkened at corners. Maybe I understand how games work unconsciously, because I've just been playing them since age 4. But anyway, for now, this is it with textures. There will be of course a lot more to them, decals like bloodstains and more dirt, all sorts of crates, computers, panels, and other props. I will also probably add some post-processing effects to the game, since by the time this video is out, I should already upgrade it from GT 1030 to RTX 4060. See, I don't waste my fiber money on stupid stuff. Show stupid stuff. And I will be able to finally run my own game. GT 1030 has very bad performance in OpenGL, and Godot doesn't support DirectX yet. Don't even mention Vulkan, it just straight up doesn't boot. My GPU just shits itself, but don't worry, I will not make the game that hard to run. By baseline, the lowest GPU for it will be 1050 Ti, and for the CPU, I don't know yet. Actually, never mind lol. I have tested the FPS on Kex PC, which has 1050 Ti in it and a similar processor to mine, and it lags. Lags in the same places as my PC does. The base threshold for FPS is of course higher, but the drop from 200 to 60 is very substantial. Seems like I will have to go on a deep dive of optimization for the next update. But let's shift our focus from the level for a second, and let me tell you about the game's UI. Lore-wise, the UI right now should be kinda organic, in a way that the player does not have a computer turned on inside of his head. So stats like health and ammo are purely feelings based. For example, health. There's no way for the player character to know how many points he has left exactly, but he could definitely feel if he was dead or not. So I decided to do the hard thing like in Postal 2. Found a random realistic render of a heart on YouTube, lowered the frame rate, made some outlines, compressed the shit out of it, and now I have a heart that gets redder the lower the health goes, beating faster and also making a sound. There is also a fun bug that happens if your health goes above the maximum. Because the opposite color of red is light blue, the heart starts to look as if it was ubercharged or something. I even called this a demigod mode in the debug menu. Now for how to visualize ammo, I had to actually think for more than 5 seconds this time, and ask friends for ideas. How do I tell the player the approximate amount of ammo left? I could go the way of Tarkov, but I don't want that in my game. And Kek came up with the genius idea of it being a combo counter. You shoot, it counts, and after some time it resets. So this way, for example, if you have shot 15 rounds, you can estimate yourself how much ammo is left. You still don't know how much ammo you have in reserve, but I have some ideas for the next update on how to visualize it too. If you want to know the details of how I made the health and UI, you can go to my itch.io page, the link will be in the description, close to the like button and the subscribe button. There are also dev versions of the HUD elements, which are plain simple numbers, and you can see your inventory and total ammo. But I have already made it so you can swap out each separate element for one another. For example, in the future, if you have already unlocked the complete health display, but want to keep the old heart, you can change it. For a long time there was almost no audio in the game, just some CS 1.6 gunshots and reload sounds on weapons. But once I started adding more, I was amazed at how important sound is. It feels like one of the foundations that games are standing on, the other one probably being gameplay. When comparing what immerses the player more while soloed out, I think sound is a winner. Just take a look, or hear, for yourself. Here we have visuals of a destroyed lab with no audio. And now just the audio alone. Which one immerses you more? So one of the first things I started adding was the player's movement sounds. Jumping, landing, footsteps. Of course, footsteps are material dependent. They work by having this small area check for any walkable surfaces, and then looking at their physics material component. Pretty simple stuff. Footsteps also have different volume levels, depending on whether you're running, crouching, or jumping. This also alerts enemies at different distances. For example, running and landing can be heard from further, compared to walking and crouching. After that, I added some environmental stuff, like impact sounds for different materials. And while searching for them, I found these files that are literally the ones that BattleBit uses. Because of how they sound, I would not consider them as impact sounds for concrete. To me, they rather sound as if it was some sort of a tile material instead. Concrete sounds should resemble more of a stone material, so this is what I settled on. When it came to flash impacts, the ones that are going to be used on enemies, I had to actually work on them a little more than just downloading free stuff from the internet. It was a combination of the famous blood, gore and bone sound effects video, and some random impact sounds from games mixed and edited. I'm not really satisfied with how they turned out, but for now, these sound effects are for general flash impacts, and these ones are for headshots. As for the player's impacts, I really wanted for them to sound different, as if they were inside of your head or something. So I added a bunch of effects, like beat crash and stereo. This is how they turned out. And for melee weapons, I actually like the way they turned out. It's a combination of different sounds for hitting a wall, for hitting flesh, then different hit sounds for the pipe, depending on the type of attack. And in the end, this is how they sound all together. I also use this effects from Source games in some places, since they are relatively open source, and I would just go insane trying to find sounds as perfect as stuff from the Half-Life series. While these are little sounds, they are nonetheless important. But what affects the immersion the quickest is the ambience. Even when my level visually is empty, bringing in ambience from Black Mesa instantly immerses you in the feeling of this place going to shit. I will of course make my own ambience later on, this is just a placeholder for now, because as I was saying before, It is important to replenish your mental energy by adding cool stuff once in a while. I even went as far as to add different ambient zones. For example, in the beginning, you hear a lot of sirens and stuff burning, because these are the labs. There are supposed to be a lot of computers around, while on the stairway, there's pretty much nothing besides some noise. Because nothing is there to burn, or to produce siren sounds. Also, I added random distant explosions that shake the camera. And as a finisher, I added audio zones. These are the zones where effects like reverb and delay get applied. This is a ventilation shaft, for example. The way I achieved this ringing effect, like in Half-Life 1, is by having a delay effect with very low time, 10 milliseconds to be exact. So, as I promised, here goes the level walkthrough. You start in what is supposed to be a research lab, just backing out of a containment tube. As you go further, you start to see parts of the facility collapse. Up next is a storage area, with a tutorial that teaches you how to use ladders. The first room is a relatively safe environment, whereas the next one requires you to apply the knowledge you've just gained to jump over gaps. Now, you will have to press crouch and jump to fall off the one-way platform, and take full damage, because the passage on top is blocked. But in the room ahead of you, you will find a couple of medkits and your first melee weapon, which you will use on this ventilation shaft. Coming up the stairway, you will meet your first enemy. And after either killing him or ignoring, a wall is gonna fall, making you go into the ventilation to your left. As you traverse further, you will reveal the next room and will be offered a choice, either to fall right in front of enemies, taking them out yourself, or go to the control room. Activate a button and possibly kill them this way. This is also a moment where sounds had great impact on the feel of the scene. Here's how it is with no sound. Pretty boring, right? And once again, I could not think of a better source of these electrical sounds than the Half-Life series. They are just so perfect. And after this part comes nothing yet. As promised, if you want to play my game, you can go to my itch.io page to download a public build of it. And just so you will have an incentive to watch up until this point, or skip the video if you are stinky, I have put a password protection on the archive. And the password is zombie123. Since the game is not that big right now, you can try out both the testing grounds and the level I showed you. But when the game gets big enough, I will make fewer public releases, as because it's gonna be a full price title in the future. Maybe I will make a Patreon page and do some stuff there later. Let me know if you would be interested in this kind of thing. Anyway, as I said before, the level is not very optimized right now, and I'm not really looking for any bug reports. I know that a lot of stuff is not complete and buggy, but general feedback is still appreciated. You can leave it either in the comments of this video, on my itch.io page, or in my Discord server, and you already know where to find the link for it. As for the stuff that is planned in future, but not promised to come soon, there will be a second main character in the game, called Yotsuya. She will be your involuntary companion throughout this journey, but you will only meet her after escaping the facility, so stay tuned for further devworks. No matter how bad the situation is, I will always be cooking. Cooking just as a fuck you to the challenges the life and this country might throw at me. This was Solid, the motherfucking P, and I'm signing off for now.